Let me officially start the meeting. It's 5:02 p.m. And this is a meeting of the Junction Village Open Space Task Force. I'm going to pull up the agenda. This was originally intended as a public hearing, but we changed our mind on that because of timing. And so it's just a regular old meeting now. There's a brief agenda. Approval of minutes. We have two sets to look at, November 18th and January 6th. Review updated concept plans. I sent those to everyone yesterday. I'll pull those onto the screen in a minute. Discussion of next step, prep for town meeting, site walk, public hearing, and also public forum, that should say. And then also the FinCom hearing. I just got the date for that from Marcia, and I will tell everyone when that is. Discussion of possible fundraising possibilities. This just keeps coming up, so I thought we would put it on the official agenda, public comment, and then we'll be done. How does that sound to everybody? Good. Hi, Pam Rockwell. And then also, hi, Linda. Hi, Peter. And good to see you, Steve and Harry. So without any further ado, I would love to talk about the minutes of November 18th and January 6th and see if we can get those approved. Sue, do you have, where'd Sue go? Oh, she's still there. Sue, do you have anything to say about those, or you made edits and I made those corrections and sent them off to everyone, so you all have Sue's fine tooth editings on those. Any comments, changes, amendments, concerns? No. Can I have a motion from someone to approve the minutes from both November 18th and January 6th?
Moved.
Krista moves those, and can I have a second?
A second.
8 seconds. I realize that I actually don't have anyone taking minutes tonight. Sue asked that it not be her, so that Steve did it last meeting. So Krista, thank you so much. Or Harry, I don't know when Harry's last time was up. Harry,
No, I can do it as well, whichever you like.
Thank you, Harry. Why don't you, and then we'll let Krista off for now.
Thanks, Harry.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. So again, 5:02 start, Harry. And we have a motion by Krista, seconded by Steve, to approve the minutes. All in favor by roll call. I say aye. Steve?
Aye.
Krista?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
And Harry?
I
We can't see you, Sue, but don't worry. It's all right. For some reason, you're off camera.
Oh, I can see her.
Oh, I can't see her at all.
I can't either. Okay, well, that's weird, but.
Oh, she's frozen
Right.
on my screen.
Completely black on mine for some reason. Isn't that odd?
Well, I got a pop-up to leave the meeting and return, which I just missed. So I guess there was a Zoom hiccup. I could leave and return, up to you.
Whatever you want, Sue. We have form regardless, so we can just plow ahead.
I can just be invisible.
Okay, fine. All right, so with that, folks, let me, how do I silence my notifications so that you're not hearing all these dings? Let me just try to do that. There we go. So let me pull up the new rendering. I will do that right now. I sent it to you all. But I'd like to show you the newest. This is delivered this week. Steve, just nod your head if you can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. The changes are this. They put in more obviously the two lines, the 25-foot and the 50-foot. They also, I don't know what that is. What's that?
Oh, it just says 100-foot buffer zone, but it's
This, all
blobbish.
this?
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
fat text.
Okay. I asked them to take out the little, as Sue likes to call it, a cauliflower. So that has been removed. And also the plinths, there were 9 total plinths that sort of dotted various areas in this area. I asked them to take them out and put as many as he thought appropriate. Whoops. Down here, it looks like he put 3. I wondered, and we can talk to Liz about this as time goes on. I wondered if we could actually start to have them line up the path here, but that's not really our property. That's not our property to put anything on. And I don't think he changed anything over here. I didn't ask him to. So these were just in direct response to NRC requests for renovations. I also asked him to put the actual distance on these overlooks for what they were. I think Delia is looking for smaller than 30 feet. But they also reserve judgment. They, meaning Delia and Greg Higgins, reserve judgment until it's flagged, because they agreed that you just can't visualize it until you're actually standing there and seeing the width of what the overlook is and where it falls. And so, again, as Bill reminds us all the time, this is a concept plan, and I don't think we have to get into any more detailed fiddling and spend any more money now. I think this should suit for, unless anyone has there are any glaring issues here, but I think this one should suit us as we go into town meeting. What do you all think? And I can highlight anything or bring into better focus anything that people want to see.
I was thinking the same thing. It's a concept plan, and it doesn't matter if the overlooks are exactly
Right. Right. Krista, what are your thoughts?
I think it looks fine. I was just curious, like, kind of where things left off with the NRC and the issue of going out and flagging the buffer zone and knowing exactly where you can't see my arrow, the 2 little rest points are.
Yes. So we, Krista, were you at that meeting that wasn't a meeting where we had to adjourn without negotiating last time we met?
Oh,
I think you were
yes,
there.
it was. Did we talk
So
about that?
yes, and I think what we just talked about is to hold off on the flagging because it's a $4,400 expense. And we just wanted to hold off on it until the snow had melted and that it was easier to get there and easier to see what was going on. Sometime in, I think we said at that meeting, early April, because when's town meeting? In early May, is that right?
May 1st.
Yeah, so early April, because the snow would be gone, but the leaves still wouldn't be on the trees, to give us the sort of best of both worlds. So flag it around that time and then do the site walk and the public meeting then. And that's what we had decided at the last meeting. Does that still suit everybody?
Well,
Yeah, I thought the point of the reason that for the flagging and the site walk was because the NRC wanted to see where these.
They do.
Yeah. Okay.
They do. But I feel like if we did that in early April, we'd have enough time to sort of, work with them and appease them in advance of town meeting. But if you
Got it.
think,
Okay. Yeah.
because Delia has over and over again put across the point that they wrote a very favorable letter. So Delia's put across the point that this is just sort of fiddling with the concept plan so that all parties are happy, but no one thinks we're not going to come to some sort of resolution in terms of exactly where the flagging, exactly where the path goes and exactly where the overlooks are.
Okay.
Sue, how do you feel about the plan here and what it looks like and whether we're good to go for now?
Yeah, I actually was not sure. Well, I think we're good to go with this plan for town meeting. I think the NRC understands it's a concept plan, and town meeting voters may not fully understand it, but I think this is close enough to the final plan that it'll be okay. I'm a little unclear on how we would turn up $4,400 with which to flag, unless this is why we're going to be getting to fundraising possibilities later.
I'm not sure. I understand your question.
If we want to flag before town meeting, and if it costs money to flag, then we will have to find the money in our budget.
We have a budget with CHDC and they understand. Liz had a conversation. Oh, Liz is here. Liz, could you help us understand where CHDC stands with this and if that money will be available or if we have to find another source for it?
Sure. So this, all of this money comes from already appropriated monies for pre-development for Junction Village. So that included things like engineering and some of the prior work that's done. And so all the open space design that has been going on with places has been coming out of that money. There's still, maybe $42,000 left in that pot of money. But this isn't the only use for that. And I think it was, so there's money there. There's money there. I think wanted to just checkpoint with the residential portion of the project to ensure that that they're going in a complementary path forward together.
And we just want to be cognizant of not spending down that money when we don't have to. That's why I really don't want to play with the plan anymore if we don't have to, because every time I think I, talk to Bill, there's a charge.
So I would, one of my things, having walked it somewhat recently, is that part in the triangle that looks right into a very barren area in the prison. I think there needs to be some screening on that back angle of that.
Liz, you did say that.
Yeah,
You
the
did
view
say
there is really not scenic and peaceful.
Yep. You did
Right.
say that, and I will talk to Bill about adding more. You mean like adding more screening trees along this back?
Similar to the back on the other side,
Yes. Yes.
And just as, again, this is a concept plan, but I just want to throw that out there for some next rendition. It's certainly not critical now, but just to make sure that that's kind of on the list. And it might be something that the team wants to look, evaluate that with a site walk just to, understand visually what I'm saying as well. But I wanted to just get that out there.
Okay, wonderful. And Marcia, how do you feel about this final rendering, and you feel like we're good to go? Oh, I didn't ask Steve. I'll ask you, Steve, after Marcia. Marcia, how does this look to you, and you feel like we're ready, so we're locked and loaded here for what we're going to do for town meeting?
I think it's fine as a conceptual plan,
Okay.
and I think that's what we just need to say. This is a concept, and we'll be refining the details as we move forward. We need the resources to do that. So.
Okay. And Krista, do you feel like these lines are obvious enough? The red and the yellow lines?
Yeah, I think, I'm at town meeting, I imagine you or someone else will be kind of talking people through the plan.
Yes. Okay. Okay, good. So let me stop share on that, and let's talk about a couple of things that I think we need to go through. One is the conservation restriction. Oh, sorry, Marcia.
I just wanted to, did you hear from Steve? Because you was going to say something before me.
Steve, I'm so sorry, Steve.
It's okay. No, I think it's very good. I have my only really minor comment for a future rendition is I thought the shape of the overlooks should be a square or a rectangle instead of round, just because you get more space out of a square than round. That's very minor.
I think that's a good point. I'm not sure how obvious these overlooks, the actual space on the ground is going to be, that it's going to be such distinct edges. But I think that's all part of the conversation, and then we'll ask Bill about that. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I don't know why I envisioned it to be sort of fenced in a little bit, but and
I don't think so.
no, okay, or like a railing or something. But
Well, you're right. He did talk about, there is going to be something, because one might have interpretive panels about the wild and scenic river and some of the native specimens around. And he did envision some, completely see-throughable half metal or some, I don't know, some sort of half. I can't find the word, but
well, anyway, I sort of envisioned maybe a bench on it, but that's my only thoughts.
Okay. So duly noted, and we'll make sure that we address that and the shape of that stuff once we get beyond the concept plan. Yes.
Harry?
Who's speaking?
Sue is. Did you pull?
Okay, Sue.
Harry? Did you ask Harry what his thoughts were?
And Harry.
Yeah,
no,
I think it looks good. Yeah.
You're happy with the way it looks as it is now, Harry?
Yes. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry, I'm being exclusive.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks,
It's
being exclusive.
not good. If you want me to put a note down though, Steve, you were saying what you thought should be square instead of round?
The overlooks.
Overlooks square.
These things, Harry. These two things.
Okay.
These
Yeah,
are
I-
my-
Yeah, I think the overlooks are really good features to have and just, I don't know, just my own thoughts.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Okay. So I'd love to hear from Krista and anyone about the status of the conservation restriction and how much we need to insert ourselves into that conversation. I want to make sure we don't lose sight of it and have it get written without our input. But I don't really understand that process like some others on the call. So Krista, can you help us understand the timeline and what we need to do for that?
Well, so I think the ball is in Delia's court right now. I had sent you and
Yep.
Delia a draft a long time ago, and I don't think I ever got anything back on that. So but I kind of figured it was, there was no urgency until kind of we had a better sense of the timeline of when, what we wanted in the design and to make sure sort of the elements were in place more or less, and then kind of start drafting the reserved rights. So I think I only worked on the purposes
Yeah.
section, and we probably need to now start really thinking about the reserved uses. And maybe, I'm not sure the best way to do that if I just could work independently with Delia on that. I don't think it's like something we should try to do at a committee level.
I am happy to help or facilitate that in any way. Liz, do you have any guidance for this or no? This is outside of your, okay.
Well, I think that, the CHDC would want to be, brought in at the appropriate time. And I've not really been instrumental in a CR before, but I do have in my mind, there's this part that's called the baseline conditions that's always been on my mind.
Okay.
Of include, like trying to, get that done, as well as whether we need to have aerial photographs and whether, because of the sensitivity of the site, and how to really arrange for those, and whether we need to do full scale, like by a drone, or we can just do something that's a little bit less high scale. So I have questions about that part of the CR process. It might not be CR specific, but things related to the CR.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can,
Marcia.
go ahead, Marcia.
I was just going to suggest if Krista were to work with Delia to come up with a list of the purposes or uses that we want to reserve for that space, it could be reviewed in a committee setting. And just to make sure that we've covered all the things that are envisioned or what people have been thinking about.
Yeah,
So
maybe we come up
that
with a
would be
first draft.
probably the most efficient use of people's time and be inclusive in reviewing it.
And to do
Marcia,
this,
do you-
Krista, would we, you already sent something along to Delia. Should we finalize that between you and Delia and then send that for review to the committee in advance of our next meeting?
Yeah, I think, why don't I talk to Delia about kind of finishing a first draft that we can then share with everybody, because we really just did a section of it. Marcia, regarding the baseline, do you know, does Delia usually hire someone to do those for the town for CRs?
It all it all depends. I think this is a situation that I think it's required of CHDC to do that as part of the conditions. Am I not correct, Liz? Or is that Grantham Group?
I think it's non-specific. I think it attributes it to just it must be done. It doesn't really say who, but CHDC as the landowner feels responsible not to actually do the work, but responsible to having it done.
Right.
And I wonder, do we need to resolve the ongoing maintenance of the property under the CR, or is that kind of a separate piece that's not really relevant to the CR?
That all needs to be negotiated. I can start doing that now if you'd like. That's
I just didn't know how it factored into the actual CR. I know we got ahead of just the uses that you were talking about, but those were all sort of my other things
What
in
do
my
you
mind.
all think about that?
The CR doesn't specify who's responsible. It's kind of, it runs with the property in perpetuity. So I just wanted to touch on the baseline. Liz, don't worry about aerial photos. The state has all the, up to date or 2019 ortho photos that can be used in the baseline.
Great.
And then it's mostly on the ground photography. They take photo points from all around the property. And it has to be completed as close to recording as possible. So it kind of comes a little bit later in the process. It does take time. So, but
Thank
we can,
you.
I'm happy to, talk more with you about the timing of that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. That's helpful.
And what's the overall timing, Krista, so that I have it in my head about checking in on it? Does this have to be done by April? I just have no point of reference.
No, I would say 6 weeks before we intend to record the CR, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the time of year. If it's winter, it's a little trickier. But recording isn't going to take place till there's the occupancy permit, right? So that's the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we have some, maybe not survey work, but confirmation of survey points. I think that, what do they call that? The 80X plan or the 81X plan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's been left open because there's some, kind of fine tuning with Grantham, just making sure that those boundaries are exactly set. So that plan has not been completed. So there's some fine details that need to be confirmed.
Forgive my ignorance, but an occupancy permit is not awarded until the whole thing's built and people are ready to move in. Is that it? So we're talking a couple of years before the CR is set into stone, 6 to 8 weeks before that.
Correct.
So we don't need to be worrying about that this minute. We're not
No.
going to miss any sort of boat with this.
No,
Is that
Correct.
right?
No. No, I think a trigger point for getting started would be when the building permits are issued.
Okay.
Then the project's going to be moving ahead and all that. I mean, we can certainly do some pre-work, but in terms of actually completing all of these tasks.
Okay, great. So that's one category of thing. The other thing that I'd love to talk about is whether we should start now. I assume we wait for our first installment from town meeting to make sure that they're in support, but whether we start to talk about making lists of plant, because I think people are gonna want to hear about what the plantings are. They're already asking those questions. Is it okay to start talking about that now, or is that also premature? Oh, I just got a cup of tea delivered to me. Is that premature, or is it, I know you'll say, well, we can start that anytime, but I don't know when that sort of stuff starts to become part of the formal record.
I know that well, Marcia can confirm this, but I believe there's a list of recommended native plants that the NRC has for when homeowners are doing site restoration. Maybe we could just refer to that as, the potential palette.
I think that would be a good starting point. I think we need to refine the plan, the concepts further to
Okay.
really understand and maybe look at some of the little ecosystems and do some of the invasives removal to see what we have to work with. We need to look at this, what the condition of the existing soils are, what kind of amendments might be necessary, or identify what plants would survive under those circumstances before we can go creating a palette.
Okay, so that's premature to be talking about that.
But I think Krista's idea of starting with the natural resources recommended plants, native plants, is a great idea as a starting point. And
Okay.
we can amend, add to that.
Okay. And also Delia gave me some other sources to look at. And also I presented to the pollinator committee, and they're very excited about partnering with us on this and making their own recommendations. And they're such a wonderful, lovely group of people, and I would love to hook them right in on all of those decisions.
I know when we had the public forum, I know there was one participant who had a lot of plant suggestions, including, fruit trees and while I love the idea of permaculture and edible landscapes, it's a lot to manage. And I think my recommendation would be, let's try to stick with those plants that sort of are natural wildlife food sources, like some of their native, shrubs. but not really try to get too much into edible landscapes for
Yeah,
humans.
Delia has the same exact feeling about that. She referenced that after that meeting and feels exactly the same about that. Okay, and then let me I just want to make sure I'm looking at the agenda, that I'm not going willy-nilly everywhere. Oh, okay, well, we're talking about next steps, which we are. Should we set any dates yet for the public forum and the site walk? Or again, we're, a month and a half out from that. Is it too early or is it never too early? I'm happy to go either way. What are your thoughts about it, folks?
Probably better set a date for the forum because pre-town meeting forums
Okay,
are pretty
Fill
heavy
up.
around. Marcia would know better than me, but I think like the planning board and the FinCom and the select board have probably already got their dates set.
Yeah.
So we could pick one to
okay,
avoid overlapping.
But I
okay.
think most of the hearings for town meeting are in early to mid-March. So if you were to select a date that's toward the end of April, you could watch out for school vacation week, but or late March
Early
or
April.
early April
Early
before
April.
school vacation week.
Yeah.
Because town meeting is May 1st, Sunday, May 1st.
How about, it would be this, I think this is Ash Wednesday, so maybe that won't work, but I was thinking as early as Wednesday, the 6th. How does that sound, just as a concept to folks? 5 to 6:30, which people seem to like that time because it's before dinner. Would be virtual, I'm assuming. I mean, maybe everything will change by then, but I think we can get a lot done and a lot more people to a virtual forum. How does that sound for a forum for people, April 6th? Krista's saying yes, Liz is saying yes,
It works for me.
Sue,
You
Marcia.
said March 6th is a Sunday.
I'm sorry, April 6th. If I said March, I meant April. April 6th, Wednesday.
Okay. April 6th, it would work fine.
Okay, Steve, how does that look for you?
April 6th is good.
Okay, and Harry?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, so 5 to 6:30, April 6th, and that means that we would do the site walk immediately before that, which I know it's always a risk, but I think we'll probably be okay without snow and ice right in late March. Does everybody agree?
Well, one can certainly hope, and just as before, we should have a snow day.
So
So-
what if we do March 26th and April 2? They're 2 Saturdays, same deal, noon for the site walk. I can do that without anybody. I don't need, I'd love for you to come, but I don't need everybody there. Or do we need a quorum there, Marcia, to run a site walk?
It's usually helpful to have the quorum there. If you are anticipating a quorum, you'll have to post it as a meeting. But that's not a big deal.
Right.
I know I'm out of town on March 26th, so I won't be able to be there, but I don't count. So
And it's a Saturday, Marcia. I don't think you need to be there anyway. Good Lord.
I'm a glutton for punishment.
No, you're not. So what do you all think? So if I set those dates as Saturday, March 26th, snow date, rain date, whatever, Saturday, April 2, does that suit the gang at noon? We'll allot an hour or so to walk the property.
It works for
Liz,
me.
am I allowed to ask Bill to come to that, or is that just a waste of money to have him schlep here?
Well, I mean, he's gonna charge whatever by the hour. And so if you think that it's critical to have him there, that's what you can work out. We can talk about that in terms of what would he add different than walking through the plan that the committee has really vetted.
And we would have it flagged before then, I'm assuming, everyone. So we would try to have it flagged in the last full week of March, around there, at least by then. Does that make sense, everyone? Marcia?
That makes sense, but I'm just cautioning about noon on Saturday. Most people would like to get started. That's right in the middle of their weekend
Okay.
day. So you might want to make it a little earlier, like 9 or 9:30.
I'd love that. Myself, I'd love that much better too.
Yeah.
So 9 a.m. All right, everybody? That's better for me too. Okay. Wonderful. So that's a lot of good planning stuff right there. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to everyone about is I'm starting to get requests and comments about memorial things, memorial benches. You all know the tragic loss of Peter Nickel this week, and I was approached to see if maybe a tree could be someone could fundraise for a tree and a tree could be planted in his name there. I think a lot of people, given the opportunity to not put benches, which is always the ask on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, for example, but to actually sponsor trees. It's a wonderful opportunity to serve two things, to memorialize someone, but also to have a fundraising. And these would be trees that people don't just show up with a magnolia tree. I mean, we choose the trees from part of our palette. What does everyone think about that? What are the town restrictions on that? What do we want to get into that? We had talked about fundraising. What do you all think?
You know how I feel about trees.
Yeah.
So I love the idea. I think it would, we would want to kind of sit down and have a good talk with CPW and the tree warden, because planting is it's a lot of work, and watering is a lot of work. So we just have to make sure that they were on board with the whole idea.
Okay.
You're raising a question, Krista. This is not town land.
Oh, right. Right. They won't water them and they won't plant them.
So I'll just say, this has been a sticky point for the town in that many people would like to have a little plaque at the base of the tree. And then it becomes, okay, what happens when it's damaged, when something happens to it? What happens when the tree dies? We had this issue with the evergreen tree that was decorated every holiday. It was in severe decline. And when it was time to remove it, the family was outraged that we were going to be doing that. So, it's a cautionary tale. And once we gave them the condition of the tree, they said, oh, okay, we understand. But then the marker and all that went along with it. So there are certain things that you want to be very clear about what you will and will not do. And it may be that you want to memorialize the names on a web page or in another way, rather than this tree was so-and-so and have it something at the base.
Okay.
Or if you want to do that, that too is fine. It's just,
Okay.
that's a decision that you need to consider.
Okay. I think
Maybe we
that's
could
really
have
good advice. Oh, sorry, Krista.
Maybe we could have a memorial tree path where the people contribute to the tree and a brick paver, and then their names in the brick paver.
Oh,
Although
I
there's
love.
still the problem of
It's a-
what happens
That's
when-
in the plaza.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, I was going to suggest that we would not want to have memorial trees in the river area that
No.
were marked.
No,
And,
Meadow side.
lives as long as it lives, and that's that. In fact, the triangle area seems like a far better place.
Yeah.
We could put markers on the interpretive on the entry sign saying this tree in honor of so and so. But even putting it online might be better, because trees don't last forever, and you never know.
Trees don't last, and also that's much more permanent over there. And I think if we do it at the site of the tree and then write up some sort of, almost like a contract to say, we're very happy to do this, but we can't assure or ensure that this tree will outlast us all, sort of thing. Does anyone know general categories of funding for that? Like what people ask for? Krista, do you know that? Like what people ask for when they're like, if you want to donate this tree, it's a cost of what?
Well, I think for a 1.5 inch, diameter tree is can be like $250 to $350, depending on the species. And then I want to say it's at least $300 if you have the nursery install it. So,
but that's just covering cost as opposed to fundraising. Is it immoral to think about, like a $10,000 request per tree, or is that not okay?
Well, I think, I mean, a donor, I guess it would be up to the donor,
Right.
what they wanted to do, yeah.
That, what your 10,000 is high,
Yeah.
I think, for a tree.
Be a nice tree.
It, I would say 2,000 to 5,000 might,
Okay.
would cover the cost of the installation and be a donation toward the work. So
Right.
it's probably, it's on the order of 50-50.
Okay, okay, this is such good information for me to wrap my mind around. Okay, and then in this context, should we start to develop the sort of relationships that we need to for the big maintenance question? And the way I've been sort of, when this comes up, it just came up at a historical commission coffee this week, what's going to be the long-term plan. And I said that we haven't, gotten there yet, but I think we need to start getting there because people are asking, is that, a partnership with the Trails Committee, CPW, and if they won't do it, then fine. I just don't know the answers. Is it trying to pull in an aspect of the green thumbs? And I know that's a long process too. Is it developing a friends group? Is it, what is it, maybe working with Grantham to see if there's a group of families that will, no, at that facility. Yeah, I didn't know if there was like a friends group that could be enacted at the facility for the families there. No.
Well, I just get the sense that they are really, just trying to get their base services covered. And then I think with additional bandwidth, they would be providing services for their residents and more transportation options within town. I mean, there's a whole circle of, requests that are out there for them that don't really extend into this particular area.
Okay. So what do you all think about that, about the maintenance portion and how I should start cultivating those relationships, partnerships?
Liz, is that something that the CHDC has had any conversation about yet? What are they?
No, but
envisioning?
there is some concern that they have about to the extent that as the plan develops more, that they really have no resources available to participate in this. So but they would be glad to lend their name on whatever requests you're making, because you're really a temporary kind of committee, and so so they would support and help the ask, but they don't know, they're not as knowledgeable on the ask, but I know that it's in their interest and it is their desire to support solving.
Marcia, is Hayward Meadows a town property?
Yes.
Okay. So this is other, right? This is not in any way a town property.
What if the town's holding a conservation restriction, then we have, then we're able to use the property and we would maintain it, right?
Well, no, all we would do is enforce. If you hold the conservation restriction, you can enforce the conservation restriction. You don't
Right.
necessarily maintain as a result.
Can you though, as a result?
So you could have a side
no.
agreement about maintaining it, couldn't you?
Could you?
It gets
I
a
don't
little
know.
tricky
I
though,
think-
because then if you violate the CR while you're doing your maintenance, you have to enforce it against yourself.
Right. I think this bears further conversation, and I don't think I have answers right now. Maybe we need to do some research.
Okay. Okay. No other wisdom to share about this from anyone? Is there any analog property in town, Marcia? For this, anything we can compare it to?
I'm trying to think of.
Well,
No.
doesn't CHDC own properties in town?
Only this site.
They all get sold after the housing is developed?
Yep.
Okay.
Krista, even though you said that whole thing just now about the town policing itself, and I understand there are restrictions related, but is it written into the legislation that the town can't I mean, just because something doesn't already exist, does it mean that it can't ever exist?
No, what I'm wondering is, there's nothing in statute as far as I know about that would prohibit it's just sort of like it's not done kind of thing. I'm wondering if the, maybe just, if Parks and Rec or Public Works would ever do something on a contract basis. And I don't know where the money to pay them would come from. But and then it would kind of be an arm's length because the NRC is the enforcement body.
Okay,
Well, in theory, wouldn't it be possible to request CPC funds to pay the CPW to do some maintenance? I suggest this mostly in jest because we're already asking for too much money. But Marcia, you're saying that even if we got the money, we couldn't ask for it.
Not for maintenance. No. We can for design and initial construction, but
Okay.
not the ongoing maintenance.
okay. And so like for go ahead.
So what land trusts do is they set aside endowments for properties that help. It's really more about the monitoring and enforcement, but I mean, in theory, you could establish an endowment for the care of the property too. I suspect that would have to be raised privately somehow, and there would be a friends group or something like that.
That we do have. Chamberlain Park over in Concord Center has an endowment that was created by Anne Chamberlain when she gave the land to the town. So if we could do fundraising to raise funds for an endowment for the ongoing maintenance of the property. That's one possibility.
So we would need a sort of maintenance budget to be able to do that, to raise the right amount of money to create enough of an endowment that it would just continue, that it would be whatever.
Right.
Perpetuating. And then would there be, forgive my ignorance, would there be like members to that, like dues, or no, that's not how that works?
No, that's not how an endowment fund works. You get a large chunk of money and you put it into something that is interest bearing, and then you use the proceeds to do the ongoing maintenance.
Okay,
You have to have somebody, I assume, who oversees the investment, but
Right.
it's relatively minor. And Marcia, you mentioned a sum of money we might request for memorial trees or something. That money could go into this endowment specifically.
Correct.
if we have money left over, so if we ask 2,000 to 5,000 and a tree cost a tree cost 350 plus another 350 to install, could the rest of that money go in part of the endowment kitty?
Exactly, that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
It might be in terms of logistics, there might be operating funds, like an operating account, and then an endowment account that's actually separate.
Yeah, 'cause
That's
typically
usually how it is.
with endowments, you can't spend the principal, you
Right.
only spend the interest.
Right, but you would have actually two accounts, and I would think that the CHDC would be principals on those accounts. If
Okay.
only, the sole principal and contract, for all the work, and, they're gonna
Okay.
hold the insurance on the property, and, I
Okay.
think, I'm sure they would be willing to sort of talk about other options, but I just assumed that that's how it would go.
I see Peter enlivening himself. Peter, did you want to comment?
No, I just was tired with not having my camera work.
Oh.
So
Krista, I'm sure there's some formula or algorithm for how much an endowment would have to be to sustain something like this, and we just have to find out what that sweet spot number is. Is that right?
People typically talk about like a 5% draw. So you'd have to figure out what the annual maintenance needs are gonna be, and
And then work
And-
back.
yeah.
Okay. I'm not daunted by any of this. I feel like there's a lot of interest, and especially if we're talking about opportunities for memorializing people, I think those two things can dovetail. into each other. I'm just going to, go ahead. Does anybody have any comments about anything we've talked about? Because I'm looking to go into public comment if we don't have anything other business to talk about. Any other comments or thoughts? No. Okay. So I see Pam on the call. Hello, Pam. Welcome. So nice to see you. Did you have any comments that you want?
Pam Rockwell, Main Street. I just wanted to point out that I've been discussing this with the ORS board and with the ORS Stewardship Committee, and they're very excited about removing invasives along the river in this section of the Wild and Scenic River there, and they're looking forward to that being done. But it is very important to us that appropriate native plants are used to landscape all of this area. It's not just the parts that this committee is working on, but also the building area next to the river. So this is, yes, it's not part of this committee, but we have an interest in all of that. So.
Absolutely. So do we, Pam. You don't have to worry, and we'll include you in on all of that. How would we, should I seek an audience with the ORS group? Do they actually meet in a monthly?
I don't think you need to.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
we're paying attention.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other, so I think we got, I have some clarity on a lot of important things. Krista is going to start working with Delia to start to pull some of those baseline conditions. Is that right, Krista? Or no?
No, I think we have a long time before baseline, but I can start
Purposes and
talking to her
uses.
more about the CR terms.
Yeah.
I just
go
want
ahead.
to say, I'm glad Pam mentioned ORS and her involvement, because that reminded me that the River Stewardship Council also has a small grants program. I don't think we're in the cycle right now, but for the future, that might be a good source of funding to do some invasives removal.
And the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Friends of also has a fund that they want to spend money on projects that are adjacent to or on their trail. And that's another opportunity. Any other opportunities for local grants that you all can think of? I bet there are others. I remember them being mentioned at some meeting. I'll have to look back at the,
There are state trail grants,
yeah.
and those come around on a regular basis, and the coffers are full for the next year or two. So we should look to that as one possible funding source.
Peter, do you think if you were to win one of those grants, does that money have to be spent within the next calendar year, or can it go into sort of an endowment type fund for future maintenance?
It usually has to be spent within the year, and it's more about construction.
Okay. Okay.
That's the gist of it. But I think the town would have to apply for it. And we'd have to sort of get in queue, because I'm sure there are other town committees that want trails in place.
Okay. Okay. That's really helpful. So we have 3 things related to that. I'm going to send an email with the dates that we referenced for the public forum and the site walks, just so you can have them in an email and put them into your calendar. And then I'll send those formal requests to the town clerk. And other than that, I think we're all set. So I'm all set if the group is all set. Does anyone have anything further? Okay, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion?
I have one comment.
Steve?
When do the Zoom calls end and the in-person meetings resume? Just out of curiosity. I'm not a big fan of Zooms.
Governor's ban on, well, the governor's order expires, I believe, in mid-April.
Oh,
And they are discussing extending it further, but that has not been formalized just yet. So April would be right now when we would have to begin meeting again in person. We would want to be able to do a hybrid meeting, I think, because, well, this group hasn't seen as much outside participation, but other committees have seen a lot of remote participation, and we want to continue to offer that for as long as there is interest, because more people do get involved. But we will have to wait and see as everything else goes in this climate.
Linda, do you foresee a moment where a committee could choose for itself whether to be fully virtual? Because I love it.
Yeah, so there's a lot, a lot of pressure on the legislatures because so many people do enjoy this format and think that it's expanded engagement, et cetera. But we hope to hear sooner rather than later, as Marcia points out. It's pending right now, and I think people know we're walking up to the deadline.
Okay. Okay, good question, Steve. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
That the
S- Krista, did you make that motion? Sue, did you second?
I did.
Okay, so by roll call, we'll adjourn. I say yes. Steve,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Krista?
Yep.
And Sue. Okay, 5:53, Harry, we're adjourning. Thank you, everyone. Such a pleasure to see you and have a good night.
Thank you.